Greetings, fellow armchair imagineers. Bluedragonfive here,
and Rohith Dhar.
and we're back talking Creature Commandos, Episode 4, Chasing Squirrels. So, we're continuing on the path of kind of dedicating each episode after the first one to kind of having a flashback as kind of our main is kind of our kind of our skeleton structure of things here, kind of main plot and then flashback structure, and they keep getting more and more sad and or heartbreaking. So this week was Weasel's turn. What did you think, Rohit?
This was this is the most sad. This is not really the saddest episode of this show. I think this is one of the saddest episodes I've seen in television. Maybe I need to watch more television, but my goodness, the all the stuff with Weasel and just the way it starts and ends is just heartbreaking. And while that's happening, the main plot I think has really interesting implications in regards to sort of the wider world of the DCU. And there's just really good interpersonal dynamics, especially with the bride and Nina, and with Rick Flag and Eric Frankenstein. That as we get more into it, I think are really interesting to see how they pan out for the next few episodes.
All right. Well, without further delay, let's start breaking it down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we start things off. We have Weasels, basically his attorney slash kind of advocate. I would say Elizabeth Bates is on the scene. She's at Bell Rev, and she's basically she's demanding to see her client. Basically he's been pretty much unwillfully basically abducted and put onto a makeshift suicide squad,
Mm-hmm.
and she's nonplussed about it. So so she shows up and she wants to meet Weasel. And so the big thing with this episode, I've mentioned this in passing before, is that James Gunn's kind of said initially in jest, but knowing James Gunn, most of the time it's not just in jest. He is like said on the like on the during the post credit scene, during the commentary for the Suicide Squad movie, that Weasel may not have gotten a fair shake in the legal system. So to see that actually play out was quite delightful to see the layers to Weasel's backstory. I don't think anyone and their mother really saw coming from a mile away here. Just like, wow, Weasel really we did him dirty. And we just kind of like throw it as like a dark offhanded gag. They killed 27 children, we think, and so many more layers.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to see that kind of character show up because one, it deepens sort of the idea of that in a world filled with metahumans and monsters and creatures, what are sort of the legal, you know, dimensions to all of this in terms of does a person like organizations that pop up or existing organizations having like a wing dedicated to servicing metahuman clients or even just like non-human beings. It was really interesting to see sort of the a small snippet of what that would look like in practice. And fun fact, I don't know if you were aware of this, Dragon, but in breakdowns of this episode, the character Elizabeth Bates is actually an adaptation of a very old character from the Golden Age, and this is the same name, Elizabeth Bates, and her character or comic was called Lady at Law, and it's about a lady lawyer, just doing stuff as a lawyer, but a lady, and I think she fought crime on the side. It was unclear just from the covers, but it was very interesting to see that kind of obscure kind of a character show up, and I think it's reflected the fact that James Gunn and company are wanting to adapt the DCU and not just sort of the popular or known characters that have been in readers' minds and hearts for the past, decades or two. It's going all over the place. It's going to non-superhero sources, and especially in the light of the fact that Star Trek Rock movies in the works. I think James Gunn is really wanting to show that even in a universe predominated by superheroes and metahumans, there are still other characters from other genres that can populate it and provide color and texture to it.
Yeah, Gunn loves a blank canvas, so reaching back to the deep pools and kind of giving him new life has been very much his stamp. And now bleeding into his DC work, which seems to be a really good call so far.
Mhm.
So I'm definitely on board for that. I knew she was someone from the comics, but I did not. I had a feeling that name was too specific not to be a comics character. I didn't really have time to look into the specifics on her, but that does track from what you just told me.
Yeah. Another fun fact is that she's voiced by the lovely Linda Cardellini, who
Yep.
who people may know from Freaks and Geeks, the Scooby Doo movies, and Dead to
Mm-hmm.
Me. But and in terms of the James Gunn connection, James Gunn wrote the first two Scooby Doo movies that she starred in as Velma,
Mm-hmm.
and also she voiced Lila in Guardians 3.
Uh huh. Also, is Hawkeye's wife in the Avengers.
Yes.
Yeah, throwing that out there.
Mhm.
But yes, I do love me some Linda Cardellini. So she was very. And again, the implication being again, we really have to see how it shakes out. But again, the promise that Gunn has made, again with this whole Sergeant Rock thing notwithstanding, so we're supposed to be casting characters in animation that we would be willing to bring into live action. We have two characters in this that does make you wonder. Elizabeth Bates. I mean, per design, looks a little like Cardellini. I could buy it.
The way I understand it is that when James Gunn talked about like characters coming from animation to live action, they would his thought process was that if it was a character that they had to go through auditions for and that was part of the main cast, that they were more likely than not to have that same actor come into live action.
Mm-hmm.
But for side characters, there isn't necessarily that given expectation for them to.
Okay.
But that's, I mean, if she shows up as that character or any other character, like any work done by Lynn Cardellini in this universe or anywhere else is appreciated.
Well, I mean that and the Stephanie Beatrice character later on is what kind of made me wonder because, of course, she's a wonderful actress, and I'd love to see her brought into the DCU. But it's just a question of if we'd be that character, or perhaps we'd recast her as another, like we're probably doing with Alan Tudyk.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I love Elizabeth H. She loved her like giving Weasel the dog treats and everything. I thought that was adorable.
Yeah.
So so John Economos, we see he's incapable of running a prison. Yet essentially he's the warden, isn't he?
Um,
Okay.
Probably in name only, but
Well, that's the
really,
thing. I got the impression, like from the comics, John Economos probably play a little more directly. Okay, he's a warden who also does this on the side. But James Gunn's take on John Economos, if I have it right, is that very much he's the warden, but no, he's pretty much just a cover for like the guy who facilitates all of Amanda Waller's needs via the prison.
yeah.
Very much a figurehead warden.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he's very incompetent at his job too. Just like, oh yeah, he's sick, and he just looks right out the window. Oh yeah, sick, right? Yeah,
I appreciated seeing that he was still recovering from his injury from Peacemaker season one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it's just like if it's maybe just a few months after season one,
Well,
or
remember at the top we talked about Amanda Waller in the hot seat at Congress over, over
that's
the Suicide
that's
Squad.
right. That's right. I guess it's more just like how much time has passed. Like,
The real question that did make me wonder, especially with Waller, when she kind of shows up in this episode, that does make you wonder. This Amanda Waller, I believe it's a series for Amanda Waller, right? That James Gunn announced.
yes,
So that Waller series, you got to wonder. The vibe that I'm getting between this and also the Themyscira show, based on we have a plot thing mentioning Themyscira here. It does make me think that okay, the Themyscira show. I forget if he said specifically prequel. I think we all assumed prequel, but
no, it is a prequel because the way the show was pitched in that announcement video was that it was Game of Thrones, and it's focusing on Themyscira before like Wonder Woman's birth, and
okay,
like how does a society of women come about and all that stuff.
okay. So he literally said it was before Wonder Woman's birth.
Yeah.
Okay, well, never mind. I was going to suggest that they were. We might have been picking up on the plot thread that we kind of threw out here about like how Cersei was kind of respected by the Themyscirians.
Mhm.
But regardless, though, it does make you wonder with Waller, though, will that be, kind of, will we see that, trial and everything unfold, or most likely will it be kind of the aftermath and just kind of seeing her, basically focusing on Amanda Waller for a series? Like, will that fill in the gap of time, like post Peacemaker season 1 to Creature Commandos?
I think everything will probably follow linearly, so I wouldn't be surprised if like the show opened with the trial,
Mm-hmm.
or it doesn't even seem like she was on trial, or
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't like, but the other thing, she pretty much got off scot free, so it wasn't like there was an inquest of some kind. But it
it's
makes you
just
wonder.
it's just that she can't do Suicide Squad anymore, which
Mm-hmm.
I guess will be interesting. What does that mean for her and then her own show? She's just trying to bring back the Suicide Squad program or
Well,
something
remember, she's
else.
got her hands in all sorts of things like Argus and Checkmate and everything,
Yeah.
so she'll be busy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the implications we've seen, like one little like photo or still from Peacemaker season 2 with Grillo, and he has like the Argus logo, so I think Waller's just bridging into Argus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's shift gears here a bit before we get into Weasel's backstory. I just want to like throw this out there. So Frankenstein, he has tracked the bride to Belle Reeve. What do you
Mm-hmm.
say? You say Reeve or Rev?
I hear it's Belle Reeve. At least that's how the characters pronounce into this.
I think they're saying Belle Reeve too, because I think here's the thing: there's two shows that have like pronounced like Belle Reeve and Belle Rev, and I think it's Belle Rev in Young Justice. I think it's Belle Reeve here.
Is it like a Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul situation here?
Essentially, yes. Only there's no right answer, like with Raish.
Mm-hmm. Well,
There, hey, yeah. O'Neill
is it?
said it was Raish.
I mean, phonetically, it's like
Hey,
it should
look,
be
if it's good enough
Rizal.
for O'Neill and it's good enough for Dini to say that it's Raish, I'm electing to say Raish is the correct pronunciation.
I mean, either one is fine. Although Conroy saying Raish is such a great way of hearing his name, but
Yeah,
Ra's al Ghul, I think it can work as well. But that's either here nor there.
plus Raish sounds cooler.
Do you pronounce? Is it Talia Ghul or Talia Ghul? Now that's another. We need James Gunn to settle what the pronunciation is for.
Well, you have his number. Why don't you call him up?
I'll hit him up on Threads.
Why don't you call your colleague Elizabeth Bates, huh? Lawyer man, huh?
Anyway,
Ask her where she gets her dog treats. Anyway, so Eric Frankenstein, he has tracked the bride to Belle Reeve. And he thinks that basically Rick Flag has like a little moment with her, just saying like, "Hey, basically complimenting her, saying you guys actually delivered. If I go into combat again, I wouldn't mind having you on my team." Essentially. So looking at this little exchange, Eric Frankenstein, he was hyper jealous of every and all male figures around the bride. Gets insanely jealous of Rick Flag, especially his facial hair. Which tell me, the moment he had that little marker, didn't for a moment didn't you think he was going to like, draw a little fake beard on his face?
I honestly was thinking that as well when he got that marker. It was like
I was impressed that he didn't do that, but I was thinking like, hey, he's gonna like an idiot. He's gonna draw the fake beard on his face.
I feel like there must have been a moment where Gunn was like, "Oh, he's trying to find a mirror, but all the mirrors have been broken in the crash, and so he can't draw the beard on himself."
Mm-hmm.
Before the crash occurred, there's a neat little detail where when he's asking one of the soldiers or mercenaries, like, "Oh, I know Rick Flag. I served with him in Genre Rapport a few months, like several months ago, whatever."
Mm-hmm.
So in the Superman trailer that came out this Thursday, where there's scenes of basically villagers in some South Asian country, running about, and there's a kid raising a makeshift Superman flag.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that country is most likely than not. And this is real in like a prop when someone super break down details. So that country is called Genre Rapport, and there were actually leaks of a person being cast as like the elder of like a village in Genre Rapport. And so there's a prop newspaper in that trailer that's revealed that like there's a country called Baravia. It's a country that was in like in a golden age old Superman comic that Superman came in to stop a civil war or whatever. And based on the newspaper, it's like this Eastern European country is invading Johannapur. So it's kind of neat to see like here kind of a world building element that will be seen in full detail in Superman.
Nice. I like it. Anyway, so of course David Harbour, he's killing it as Eric Frankenstein, as we're going to see later in the episode. So just already, the man's on a jealous tear with his sights set on Rick Flag, and we'll talk about it in a sec. Let's talk about that. Let's get things started with Weasels flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it really feels like this season, or at least with the through line of or character backstories, really looking at the flaws and corruptions that accompany our inmates.
Mm-hmm.
That have kind of put them in the situations they're currently at least had like kind of in tandem, like it's kind of put some of them there, and there's it very much we're leading to a kind of a sympathy for our monsters and the kind of the tragic backstories here.
Mm-hmm.
And again, broad spectrum, it really does feel like this is a very intentional kind of part of the all encompassing, kind of James Gunn kind of mission statement for this first like phase, if you will. It sounds like he's got like maybe a 3 act structure of phases where this is like the gods and monster phase, and we're definitely hitting our monsters. What?
This is the Gods and Monsters chapter.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the god. It's called them chapters. Like so, this is the gods and monsters chapter, and yeah, like we're building up. Again, we've already built up to we're building up to the truth. It was, already, it wasn't like 27 kids, it was 8 kids. And we can see that unfold. And we have like Weasel, like around the school, and he's, basically he's being fed, like, seeming like a groundhog. And like, oh God, no, that's no groundhog. It's a full grown Weasel man. And he is, he looks all sorts of screwed up. But then again, so does every squirrel a kid wants to take home as a pet.
Or just any animal that's just like not been
That's true.
showered or brushed or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, overall, what do you think about just kind of Weasel's introduction? Like, I don't think it's what any of us expected. And I do like the framing device of like he's like looking at the photos and everything. We're kind of getting a glimpse of like kind of Weasel when his thoughts were a little more linear before he was just kind of this random wild kind of creature.
Yeah, it's interesting to how the psychology of Weasel is depicted because he's not really a fully sentient creature, but there is some base level of instincts and emotions that at the very least can make him be friendly and playful towards others, especially like little kids. And it's interesting to see kind of and this is sort of a trope that one can see in a lot of stories that deal with abnormal creatures or monsters or whatever. It'll be the case that the kids aren't really harmed and connect through the creature, and there's a commentary to be made that for the adults in those particular kind of stories, the adults have prejudices that are built and taught into them and lead them to lash out. So like stories like ET or any story where a kid finds like a monster that's really has a heart of gold or whatever. I think that's just a well-worn trope, but I think in this, what makes the trope not feel formulaic is just one, the use of animation medium leads to the level of expressiveness for not only just for the Weasel but for the kids. Yeah, and two, the just the overall plot where these kids are just tragically die due to the misfortunes of just adults not understanding what they're seeing or investigating what's going on. They're just going off of instinct. And for Weasel, like he doesn't like when things go awry, it's not like he just lashes out and harms the kids as the adults are harming them. He specifically has like a savior instinct. And that's the thing that really is sad about this whole thing is that it's not a story in which a Weasel, because of a certain like slight by a kid or adult, like just turns feral or wild. He throughout that entire flashback has nothing, no ill intent or ill will or does anything malicious. He, if anything, is on prime to like save these kids, to try to save that one blonde child, but he's the adults get in the way, and if the adults didn't get in the way, he could have maybe saved not all of them but a few children. And that's the thing that's really sad about it, is that in the systems that these monsters operate in, they could do some heroism, but because of how they look, they're just kind of boxed in to be nothing more than you know beings to be scared of. Even though what we really should be afraid of is the adults that run these systems or run the society.
Oh yeah, you know my favorite detail about this backstory is
What?
I love that the blonde girl, like the main one that he saves, or he gives, he tries his hardest to save. The one
Mhm.
he builds seemingly builds the strongest connection with the first one. Basically, the girl in the image that we're seeing here. I love that in design, both color wise and just like the hair and everything. I love that. I could be reading into it, but I think it's pretty. I think it's a pretty straight line to draw. Um, the intention is to connect to the last episode where Weasel he pulled like the big hero moment, saving Alana.
Mhm.
I like to think that on some level he saw Alana's design bears a striking resemblance to this child. So in a sense, he was saving the girl that he couldn't save in the past with Alana, which is why he fought so hard for her.
I don't know. I mean, I could see that,
I'm
but
just saying it's very similar. The same hairstyle, the same color. I think like the eye color is the same. I don't. I think it's a. I don't think it's that crazy a leap to take.
I think it just speaks more to Weasel's having the Weasel character having much more of natural protective instincts than people give him credit for. Because they consider the first Suicide Squad movie, he doesn't really commit any violence, right? Because remember,
Well, it doesn't remember. He doesn't do anything. He just basically he's freaking out on the plane,
yeah,
and then he and then he drowns. Essentially, that's all he does.
yeah, but the thing is, it's like when people describe Weasel, it's like, oh, he's this monster who kills 27 kids, and it's like when he falls out, he's just kind of like a scared little puppy, or not a pet pup, but just like a wild animal that just doesn't really hurt anyone. He just looks like deranged.
Yeah,
And I think with this episode, it just kind of makes us like, man, Weasel just was inappropriately involved in the Suicide Squad. Everyone else, at least, is either done bad or isn't above like doing selfish things. Like Weasel was just wrong place, wrong time.
yeah. I mean, look, even if that even protective instincts or no, I mean, do you? I don't know. Do you think there's like a thematic kind of thing we're trying to parallel there? Where again, maybe it's like kind of the thing of man, he had his big star moment where he saved her, and like, oh, he's saving her so voraciously because he's protective of her, maybe seeing her like that kid.
Um, I think if that was the case, I feel like Gunn would try to hint at that connection with like maybe when he sees Alana, he flashes back to see the girl or whatever. But since the flashback to Weasel is happening when he's away from Ilyana and like Pakistan, I don't see that being sort of the connection. I just think that Weasel is just a natural protective creature. I think we just if there was any other scenes where Weasel could have protected someone but
Well, I'm
didn't.
just saying maybe it's like a little subtle thing. It doesn't have to be. I don't know. I think it's a subtle nod.
I mean,
I could be reading into it. I'd probably be.
I mean, like they have similar designs, but I think part of it is just like oh, like small blonde girl with blue eyes. That's always something that engenders some level of like protectiveness.
But it's
Or
like the same exact hairstyle.
I mean, the real world answer is that animators just sometimes reuse designs to be efficient.
All right, all right.
I
Anyway,
mean, I'm not saying that that couldn't be the case. Like it could very
see if
well.
that were the case, I think that would be kind of a nice little layer to add. But
I mean, it's nice layer of one hand. I just kind of think if Weasel
because it's
was
like redemptive that he was able to save the girl in some respect. And of course, we know things are probably not going to pan out well.
well,
The la-
I kind of prefer they're not. For me, I would prefer if you just did it just out of natural instinct, because then it's like Weasel's someone that could just save anyone, given the given the right circumstances. Whereas if with your connection, it's like okay, he can save people, but that'd be save people that could remind it. Well, what if there's someone that's in danger, but that doesn't remind him of any of the kids, right? Like I kind of would think that James Gunn is trying to make the point that these monsters, if put in the right place with the right support, can be heroes or people capable of saving others, regardless of any particular individual sympathies or empathies or empathetic mindset.
okay. Anyway, so main plot: Cersei. She's being interrogated by Amanda Waller, and some fun writing on the Waller banter here. With her and her posse here. You got her, you got Economos, and you got Rick Flag.
Mm-hmm.
We have like the whole thing of like like first degree witchy poo and like Maleficent the second degree, and then like, you're throwing Bette Midler in there without using like which Sanderson's sister she is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was fun. It's kind of nice to give Amanda Waller. So we don't really give Amanda Waller comedy often, or like
Or her being snarky, and sort of agree.
yeah, it's just kind of fun,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we learned that Cersei, and I assume she's been able to do this. I know she's a magic character, and per like the Greek myth, and obviously this little piggy, she can do like a lot of the classic stuff, like she can turn people into animals.
Yeah.
But the whole clairvoyance thing. I mean, I guess that's on brand for her. So one of Cersei's magical abilities that she is clairvoyance. She can see into the future, kind of glimpse the future.
Yeah, and the detail from that, and bringing in that expert who actually, so Ella McPherson, the character that's played by Stephanie Patrice.
Yeah.
She's actually a recent character. She shows up in a
Gotham Academy.
Yeah, where she plays the history teacher at that school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was cool to see a recent character kind of show up. I guess she's recent. That's like within the last 10 years, but
yeah.
But still, it's really cool to see that James Gunn isn't just, using just characters that are in the old, golden age, silver age, but even modern day characters as well.
Yeah, I was impressed by that. Because I actually read a little bit of Gotham Academy, and she did look really familiar. And I heard the name, I was like, "Wait a minute! I think I vaguely know who this is."
Mm-hmm. And the role that she plays in this episode really fits well. Like, of course, as a history teacher, just someone that's knows sort of world history. It's interesting to see her as an Amazon expert. And the specific anecdote or story she shares.
She's a shopping ninja. She knows all about Amazon. No, I'm kidding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really liked it was really interesting to her to tell the story about Cersei, like seeing a typhoon, and her boarding the Amazons, and most of them were able to survive, but some of them didn't. It's like, okay, like it is really interesting to figure out like how is it that for people's knowledge of Amazonian culture and whatnot in the DCU, is it just like stories that Waterman shares, or like their scrolls, or that's something like. If whenever gets her a show in the DCU, she will show up. But I'm just very curious for that corner of the universe, how people know about the Themyscira, what they know, and if there's just going to be further attempts to have people be exposed to the idea of Themyscira, the future and all that.
Yeah. Anyway, so. This is the big. I presume this is the big status quo shift that you were alluding to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now here's the thing. I saw like the most I saw is I saw maybe like a few images, briefly, of like the whole crucifixion part. That's all I really saw. I had no idea what the context was or anything, and But yeah, so future's bad. Essentially, in the sends Amanda Waller on the warpath, and the vision itself is that Alana Rostovic. She comes to power, as she's basically on track to currently. We saved her life, so she's able to do that. This leads to an attack on the world. If I read it right here, she's got a very strong army, got a lot of bombs. She teams up with Gorilla Grodd, kills the Justice League and a bunch of other heroes, for a little bit of the Teen Titans and the Justice League. We see like Superman literally crucifixed, which I think it does feel fitting that the week we get the Superman trailer, we do get the same day. In fact, we get the Superman trailer, we crucify him.
Yeah,
feels very James Gunn, because he knows people are going to crucify that trailer any which way anyway, so might as well.
Yeah, well, I think the trailer got. That's mostly positive reception.
Well, no, you're right. It did. I'm just saying it's like James Gunn preparing for any criticism. Like that's the joke of like, well, some people are going to like it, some people aren't.
No. It's the dichotomy. It's like, oh, we want bright and happy Superman, and hopeful. We get there with the trailer, and then Superman in crucified and blood everywhere. This is the Snyder Super. You get both Superman.
There you go. So then we have like we see a Batman, we got a Wonder Woman, we got Hawkgirl, Supergirl, Metamorpho, Robin, Peacemaker, Vigilante, Starfire. I think those are all the ones that like
Mr. Terrific.
Blue Beetle might have been in there too.
Blue Beetle's there, and then also Wally West Flash.
Yeah, so we killed them all. They're all dead.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly impaled, some shot to pieces. They're all, point being, all
It
in
was
coma.
very Apocalypse War.
Yes. So, so yeah, this fills Amanda Waller with dread, and she feels. I like to think she feels. Anything? Do you think she's like sweating because of the shock, or is like moral guilt implications of like I led to the end of the world by protecting this lady? How much of you think's guilt and just like initial shock?
I think both can be true. Like that, like the way that flash, the way that prophetic vision played, it's like it's coursing through her brain. So just imagine you like there's like a blue vision, and you get to feel all the senses happening in your brain. And obviously, you're not there physically, just mentally you're there. That's got to be like some kind of like psychotic illusion you undergo if you have like a certain drug or whatever. So that I mean that it's kind of it's the shock of it, but then after a few minutes, it's like like oh my god, I may have just started the end of the world. So there's that there's that worry as well. I'm curious your thoughts, Dragon. That in light of the fact that Gorilla Grodd it was in the vision, does Amanda Waller and the people in Argus and whatnot are not aware, or is it not a thing on Gorilla Grodd's part in the DCU to have that maybe Gorilla Grodd could be mind controlling Princess Lana?
Well, that's actually that is a good point. There's a question of how. There's a question of like how established is Gorilla Grodd, Because I mean, we have a. I think we're basically when we're doing this, we're jumping into like a very pre-established DC universe. That's the
Mhm.
vibe that we're getting.
Yeah.
I mean, even just going off of Peacemaker, even though I know Peacemaker's continuity wise, Peacemaker's pulling a hat trick, which I stand behind. By the way, the idea of okay, look, we're gonna canonize what we want, and just basically going forward, we're working off of just like these things are established, but we're kind of melding it into the greater DC universe. Like that's
Mhm.
fine. Just working off of that all the same takeaways that okay, established heroes, and with that in mind, the question of the Flash, especially if it's Wally West Flash, which it seems to be, and all indications seem to be Wally West Flash, so we have a clean break from Barry Allen and everything.
Mhm.
Seems like we would have a pre-established Gorilla Grodd, and if we did, and he would have mind control. He would have his mind control abilities. Then again, if it's just Grodd, if it's a Flash right before Grodd, then we don't know who Grodd is. Because think about it, Peacemaker, we had a sentient gorilla, but that was not Gorilla Grodd. We had a gorilla that was taken over by the alien butterflies.
Mhm.
So that's the real question. Like how established is Gorilla City, and how established is Grodd? Because if he is, you're right. That is something that Man of War probably should have factored in. That it could be mind control, but
Or even the fact that she doesn't mention that, like, hey, there was a gorilla, with the princess, right? She was just like, we need to kill princess. It's like, you saw a gorilla there. Like, why don't you just like, what the fuck is the gorilla doing? Like, if Gorilla Grodd
But that's the thing. To what end is here's the thing? If Grodd can do it all himself, then why does he necessarily need her though?
that I don't know because
See, that's the one hesitation I'd have though. Of like maybe that's saying it can't just be him mind controlling because she seems pretty autonomous, and otherwise why couldn't he just if he's gonna mind control people? Why is he sitting to the side?
oh, I see what you mean. I think it
Like, why
has
would he let his flunky take control there? I mean, I understand if he needs her maybe initially, but that like in that scene, like Rod should be calling the shots there. And do you think Cersei would,
And like why I get and I guess the question is like why isn't the other like doesn't just Grodd not have a guerrilla army or whatever? I
and
it, I
what
guess
you think Cersei would go after Gorilla Grodd and not Rostovic?
that's a now that I think about it, it's just like because the thing is in that vision there was a lot of the Atomic Knights, like her palace guard, it was a full army and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
it's like, and I don't have a really good sense of what the power level is if Pakistan is like a military force.
Well,
right?
that's
It's
the
like,
thing. They're pretty formidable, but like not like take. That's the mystery. Like, are they really take over the world formidable? I mean, they had oil. That's pretty much it.
yeah, I kind of wonder if maybe this is a case where like maybe Gorilla Grodd is like exiled from Gorilla City or whatever. He's on the Alps, and maybe
Yeah.
he's like he just finds like this like backwater Eastern European country, and then just worms his way through and kind of uses like maybe the princess is like a Manchurian candidate kind of situation where she's like she has her senses for the most part, but there's a certain like keyword or phrase that makes her like act out as like an agent of Gorilla Grodd. That's probably why
Well,
Gorilla.
remember, she's got a battle scar, and that seems to be rather intentional.
Did she? She didn't have any scarring when she left, right?
No, no, no. She did not have a scar when because remember they opened the episode with like her and Rick Flag playing kissy face before he
Mm,
leaves. So
yeah.
she did not have those like facial scars. So something happens there. I don't know if that's like a Manchurian candidate thing. I think that's pretty much that. I don't know.
Yeah, because I would think that maybe Gorilla Grodd not having any resources, he's probably using the princess as a means to. But the thing is, it's like it doesn't seem like Bacalostan has has like a lot of firepower, but maybe Gorilla Grodd with his like technical know-how can beef up the. This is where this is like kind of the fun part where it's like you don't know where it could go. So I'd be interested to see what Gunn's like twist is because this is the fourth episode. We're more than halfway through, but the fact is we still don't know how or like why this vision occurs the way it does or can lead to that. One thing I'll just as an aside, like after the vision is over, I really appreciated like Cersei having tears in her eyes, and it's like it's interesting that Cersei is not like a full out bad guy. Like she may be an antagonist. She's an antagonist to the creature commandos, but like her doing this, um, like it kind of makes her to be less of a outright villain, which for the most part in the comics and just other media, she's just a traditional villain. But her having this kind of desire to save the world from hell and all that stuff, like I'd be very curious to see how that plays out when she interacts with whoever is the DC Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah. All right. So, let's see. Anyway, so point being, Rick Flag, he's been ordered to like, okay, go back to Picolistan. He was like, oh yeah, we forgot something. We just wanted to check in on you, and then kill her. Which, you know, Rick Flag, I think, is making a decent point in the whole like, come on, it's a precognitive crime. You're gonna kill people for that now. And obviously, Waller's pointing out, like, okay, look, I know you bumped uglies with her. Don't, you can't hide behind that. Doesn't mean you know her. So you're going to have to, carry out the source. So he refuses. So she's going to be looking. The implication is that she's going to have the bride take point on the mission instead of running
Going from a
away.
whiny bitch to a bitch, which
So that's, yeah,
which I really appreciated.
you appreciated that.
No, I appreciate the characterization, like of the bride, because it's like the bride in this is very has like strong Emma Frost energy, and I appreciate that kind of characterization. But like old characters with old ice queens, they do have their hearts melt over for one or two people,
Which,
and at
by
least.
the way, we see that happen in the Chow line.
Mhm.
It's kind of nice seeing the Commandos kind of friendly-ish with each other here. The bride
Yeah,
stands up for Nina.
not just the bride, but also like Dr. Phosphorus is like it's helpful. Like he takes the two foods, one for Nina, one for him. But his personality doesn't shift. He still is like his snart like sardonic like phosphorus self, but it's sort of there is a sense of fondness towards Nina, which Nina is like such a sweet gentle soul.
I noticed a couple really good foreshadows here with those two characters. Now, mind you, again, it's foreshadow, so I could be off base here depending on what we get. But I remember in the trailers we've seen like some really quick snippets of Nina's backstory. So one of these episodes we're gonna get a Nina's backstory episode, and it seemed like her in high school with like the gill suit on.
Mhm.
So this situation feels very much like a setup for okay, her probably getting bullied in school and everything.
Oh
Only
yeah.
now she's got like a friend, kind of like this is see. I guess what I'm talking about, like seeing. Look, this is I guess kind of what I'm maybe trying to suggest here with the Weasel thing is that we're kind of having these setups and payoffs between episodes. Like okay, here's something that is a bit of we're getting a payoff before we have the setup in a sense here. So we kind of had potentially had it with Weasel, at least as an example of him, like his heroic instincts, maybe drawing a direct visual parallel. And
Mhm.
then we're doing this with Nina. I was like, okay, Nina, having her lunch, essentially having her lunch stolen, and kind of making friends where she probably had trouble making friends and did not have someone to save her when being bullied like this.
Yeah.
And with that phosphorus, this one's more broad, but I only there's this one image of phosphorus where I think he's like I think it was in his human form, and he's holding he's I don't know if he's in his human form or still in the phosphorus form. He's like holding a child, which I'm
No,
sure.
no, he's in his foster home and he's like
Yeah.
tossing the kid up. I think that's probably like his daughter or
So
whatever.
that's the thing. Okay, so that's okay. So he is in the phosphorus form. So the point being that I feel is not going to end well, given he's after phosphorus, like holding tossing a child into the air.
Mhm.
Because what comes up must come down. I don't think that's going to end well, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Regardless, it does feel like Ian. That's a guy who look literal. Like probably not going to end well or not being factored in. I do think we saw him with a connection, and it seems like that guy probably does not still have that connection. I think this is him kind of forging those connections and making new friends, even if again it's through his his usual kind of out intuitive kind of sardonicness.
Mhm.
I think we're kind of teeing that up with him.
Oh yeah.
Where he's Phosphorus is probably really probably a lonely kind of surly guy because he had it all and he lost it all because of I don't know if Phosphorus did an experiment to himself to make himself that way or not. I don't know if it's a tragic accident or if it was an intentional accident. I thought it was intentional, but I could be wrong.
You'll. I mean, I know what happens for this Doctor Phosphorus, but I'll keep it to my chest so that way you can experience the tragedy of Doctor Phosphorus.
Okay. Anyway, but it's not a happy ending. I take it, right?
Well, no, that actually is not. I was I was going to try to say it was actually one of the more positive feel good episodes, but no, it's for this show. It's sad all over.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anyway, so the point being, it's kind of nice to see him, kind of get a little buddy, even reluctantly in the bride's case. Anyway, so let's talk about like one of the big standouts. But let's talk about the happy, like the one happy standout of the episode. Okay, so Rick Flag versus Eric Frankenstein. So this was priceless. This is a lot of fun. So this is a messy and hilarious fight where I love that Frankenstein is just driving this little yellow car that he's clearly too big for. Just following Rick Flag, and on some level Rick Flag kind of wants that car too because he likes yellow.
I didn't think of
I'm
that.
I'm look, I'm joking, but seriously, the Flag family does like the color yellow. That is a truth it would seem throughout the comics. And just like Rick Flag likes yellow.
Yeah,
No.
no, it's fair.
Okay, no, it's a fun color choice, I guess. End of the day. Point being, just this hilarious, like he rams into his car, and just like he's just coming out of the Rick Flag, just trying to get into his house. Like what is happening? And it's just this just out of left field. That feels very James Gunn. That feels like a scene right out of Super, right there. Just like this really awkward, just kind of like bout that's about to happen.
Or even in one of the Guardians movies, right?
Well, sure, Guardians too. I'm just saying, I'm just kind of going back to more kind of boots on the ground, just kind of like a messy combat kind of a situation. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
so as usual, I'm love. I already like Frank Grillo. I love him in this. I love Rick Flag's approach. I just love this thing of like, he's they're having this battle. This Frankenstein he's not making any sense because he's thinking maybe he's talking about the princess, but he's not sure. He's just coming after him. And anyway, so eventually, after trashing the house, you get into this battle. And again, Rick Flag impressively does not get killed by Frankenstein, which everyone else who's come up against him has not been so lucky. He's got a gun to his eye, like the one non-bulletproof part of him, which is a good strategy. and he gets him to calm down. But initially, he's like a kid having a tantrum, like smashing his, stomping his feet and everything.
Rick
And
Flagg's like, "Oh, she's not my type. She's everyone's type, and so are
so are
you."
you.
Oh man, I appreciate when Rick Flagg's like steps out. You want coffee? It's like I prefer tea, and just
I laughed so hard during that. Oh god, it was just I love the mundanes. I love the fact we're just sitting there. Again, it's also a bit of a throwback with the whole monsters stuff. You know, it's a bit of a nod to the blind man scene from Bride of Frankenstein.
well, and I think it's just like it's a very gun thing to have like absurd or fantastical like characters kind of just do the typical ordinary pedestrian kind of things like drinking coffee and chatting it up. I appreciate like Victor Frankenstein having very like kitschy, not kitschy, but like totally cheesy like pop culture reference with Titanic.
I love that he's like treating it like, okay, so you probably say, have you seen this film? And of course, well, obviously everyone's seen these movies.
And like Frankenstein calls Rick Flag like, "You're like Leonardo DiCaprio. Are you king of the world?"
Or Leo, you or Leo? Who's king of the world? Says Leo's is like, no, you. So David Harbour's just he's just cracking us up as Frank. I mean, did you like him?
Oh, he's great. I
Right?
think what's funny was that there was this person that was reviewing this episode and was like, "I hate that I find Eric Frankenstein so endearing because in the second episode, he's very much this like angry, jilted lover that feels he has possession or is entitled to the affection and love of the bride, but clearly the bride doesn't want to reciprocate that." And it's like, and that's the genius of Gunn as a writer is that he's able to take characters that could be seen just one way as an abusive or toxic or whatnot, and still and infuse them with a level of charm and affection that doesn't take away from those bad elements or darker elements. It just makes them a much more fully rounded three-dimensional being, or in this case, monster for Eric. And I'd be very curious to see how this relationship further develops, and when Eric and Rick Flag meet up with the Creature Commandos, like, is the bride going to be more angry at Eric or more angry at Rick Flag for enabling this guy's worst tendencies?
Oh yeah, it's just. But you're right. That is the hat trick where Frankenstein again traditionally is a Eric Frankenstein, a Frankenstein agent of shade from the comics. He's a really cool character, and he does have a fan base, and he's well liked.
Mm.
But starting him the way we did here, it seems to be Gunn is going to get us to a place where we'll either like him or like him despite his faults. Where again it's the fact that he is. I love the idea that even though he this character does value love and he does want. Well, he thinks he's defining love in all the wrong ways, but the fact that this character is very motivated by love, and he loves love, I guess, to
Well,
put it kind of clumsily.
it makes sense for that kind of character, especially considering the fact that like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was written. I mean, not. I have to make sure I get my literary errors right, but certainly around the Romantic era of literature is probably within that time frame. Like the Frankenstein is a romantic character in the literary sense, so it makes sense on James Gunn's part to have this character have a very kind of a wide sweeping, grand, fantastical, eloquent idea of love, but love in his mind is just doesn't. Maybe it's not that it's unrealistic, but it just doesn't give ground for how other people respond or can react to being objects of love, and that's sort of the unfortunate dynamic for him and the bride is that he feels a possession, or he's like, "You're the bride, you're my bride," but there's more to it, just being a one's companion or partner, and that's something that the bride, maybe if she's never been able to articulate, she may have, and just and Eric Franklin just doesn't understand like kind of the complexity of that. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear him just like comment, reference like other romantic movies and what he takes away from those films. Because honestly,
The Harry Met Sally joke was it's really absurd and really funny. Like, she's the fact he completely misread the point of that scene.
Mhm.
Like she made a pleasure mess in her pants. Just God. Oh my God! It's like
Yeah, for as much
there's Rick Flag coming. I don't think that was really what was happening in that scene.
yeah, for as much as like there was much drama or there was to be made about the bride kind of coming into the world and is very much a young child and learning through Victor Frankenstein. Eric Frankenstein, even in spite of he's very much a precocious child more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like he has the eloquence, he has sort of this maybe level of intelligence regarding science, and maybe he's able to handle himself in a battle. But in terms of sort of the emotional intelligence, it's very, elementary school. And I think the way he thinks about romantic movies is probably reflective of how maybe a little kid sees like those kind of movies. It's a little kid's idea of love is like very grandiose, very heroic,
Mm-hmm.
making broad sweeping proclamations. But the more complex, messy parts of love is something that Eric Frankenstein, if he's not incapable of learning, hasn't willingly chosen to engage with that because it's beyond his kind of
Right.
comprehension.
So again, it's the idea that he sees the love that Rick Flag has for the princess, and he's on board for it instantly, and he kind of finds kinship with this character that was just fighting with. He was going into a jealous rage. So I love the fact that it's like the one guy. Again, this is basically almost in a way, this is kind of like optimistically how the whole thing with Victor would have gone, but obviously it didn't. Where again, maybe there would have been like a conversation about things. Where no, instead like he goes into jealous rage over anyone who's just near in the proximity of the bride, and someone like saying no, that's not what's happening here. I'm having my own love issues. Like, oh sure, let me help you with that, and just the wonderfully kind of goofy lovelornness of Eric Frankenstein, the way David Harbour plays him. And the thing that kills me, I think the funniest thing in this episode was just like the expression, the goofy expression on his face, was just like, best friends. Basically, he's Rick Flag's new bestie, and just like Rick, like, wait, what? Just oh my God.
Yeah, like it's like he's basically like a walking incel. But he saw Rick Flag as a threat, but the fact that Rick Flag wasn't going after the bride and had his own love issues, and in a way, it's like Eric Frankenstein just mapping on his psychology onto Rick Flag, and Rick Flag isn't like making direct rebukes of that, but he certainly isn't enabling it. So it'd be interesting to see if maybe further down the line, like Rick Flag maybe just is tired of enabling or not challenging Eric Frankenstein, just gives him like a you suck speech or something along those lines. And does Eric kind of respond negatively to that or positively, or maybe just kind of mixed about it? Because this is a kind of relationship that I think I'm very interested to see the way it ends, because how that relationship progresses and culminates, I think will be reflective sort of what Eric Frankenstein could be as a character, and whether is he someone that can have the capacity to change, and if so, does he choose to? And if his inklings towards that, there's like a season 2 Creature Commandos, it'd be very interesting to see him going further on that journey, like as a member of that team. Whether that's with or without the bride, who knows? But that I think the way this character is written, it's very in that kind of, he's not a white hat, but he's not a black hat, he's just a gray hat. He's just a character that has like contradictions and limitations on his worldview. And I think he's a character that could have a great capacity to change and grow, especially with a team of monsters like the Creature Commandos.
All right. Okay, so again, just we already kind of talked about a little bit of it, but just to kind of round things out. So the tragedy of Weasel that we see kind of in this full heartbreaking sequence, while he's kind of like they're on their way back to Pikolstan, we see what Weasel dreams about. It's just this he's this harmless, overgrown animal playing outside with the kids, because they fed him and they played with him, and he's spotted by this idiot with a gun. And listen, we're seeing like the failings of all sorts of institutions here, where like the school was left unlocked, the kids going in there, like a teacher has like booze in his desk, so I love the kids like aren't drinking. I love they're just like pretending to be drunk. I love that. It's like James Gunn is a master of like this is how kids would play,
Uh-huh.
So they go to the basement, and then one of them plays with matches, and then things kind of go from there. I love it's like this domino effect of like we have a guy with a gun from a distance who's misconstruing the situation.
Uh-huh.
Basically, kids playing with an overgrown dog versus like like an actual like he's seeing it as like like some possibly like like a murderous furry of some kind as far as he's concerned.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so he mistakes the playing as an attack. Like the kids are like, throws like the kid doesn't like throw a rock, right? It's like a ball of paper. Then the kid like drops, then drops the booze, right?
Yeah, I think he just didn't anticipate hitting his head and just kind of dropped the booze and
Right.
matches around is a bit bad.
Yep. So leads, and then of course it's like in the boiler room kind of basement, which basically there's like a big God, what do you call that giant flammable thing? Is that the heat? Is it like a water heater? Is that it? There's like fuel in it, right? Like what is that?
I know what you mean.
Is it a heater? Like, it could just be like oil in a heater or something? You think?
It must be like a carbon monoxide? Because I can't think of like what would be.
Because I mean, when it was shot into, like liquid was pouring out, like fuel.
I thought, huh?
Because that's the thing. When he misfires, there's like almost like gasoline or fuel of some kind, or like an oil.
I thought the liquor was kind of
No. The liquor started got the boxes and everything on fire, and they caused like a trail. But then remember he's shooting around. Then there's like a misfire, and then more comes out. Because that causes the explosion. Initially, there's a fire, and then there's a big explosion, which then led to the little cryptic flash we had earlier on when they saw like Weasel looking all demonic, like seemingly bringing the bodies of dead children out, when in reality he's trying to save the unconscious children.
Oh, it's a boiler.
Okay, boiler. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so point being, what did he do to your child? So he's shooting around there, and then there's a huge explosion. The cops, plus the cops, like they were called earlier, and says, okay, like he's talking about a werewolf. Clearly, he's like, we're not going to send anyone, right? And then of course the explosion and everything. Cops eventually show up, and this is heartbreaking. Like we see like the children, like dead children in animation. It's always a haunting sight. So like we see the life literally like leave them. As Weasel's like he's going to each kid, and then lastly we have the little blonde girl that I would say looks like Rostovic, but let's just say we have the little blonde girl, and Weasel's giving his all to save her, and then these idiot cops they're seeing this, and they're like, well, no, shoot the monster. It's like clearly there's a small child with him, and even after we shoot him like a number of times, and he's clearly not a threat anymore. Forget the dying child. Let all the rubble collapse onto her and just kill her in front of the animal that we are arresting. Again, even the fact we're looking at it like an animal, is just the fact that okay, it's an animal, and yet we're going to try it as a man and put it in prison like a man, and yet leave the child to die. And you have to wonder how much of that is like the institution. If we're just going to say this thing was a wild animal that killed all these children, we're not going to mention our failings in letting that little girl die. That's kind of what it feels like we're saying under the surface there. How am I reading too much into that, you think?
I mean, it's not. I don't think you're reading too much into that because
clearly they fudged the report somewhere with the whole 27 kids thing.
Well, I mean, it's just that like Weasel can't communicate in English, and witnesses. So it's like, and for all intents and purposes, it's like the old man could just say, "Hey, it looked like this kid was attacking," and then I shot at it, and then the creature missed or caused like the explosion to happen. Right? There's no cameras. There's no like other witness. Like that's the thing that feels one feels bad for, because here's the thing, like GI Robot killed those people at the rally. They were all Nazis, but he did intentionally kill all those people.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And the bride, whatever action she did, she very much like had her full faculties, and she wasn't framed, or she was definitely guilty of whatever stuff that led her to prison. Very curious what happened, why Nina's prison, but that's what that we'll find out in her episode. But like Weasel is like outside of Nina, he's the most innocent. He doesn't deserve to be in there. All the other characters, you can argue, deserve to be, if maybe you're not an Imperial military squad like the Creature Commandos, like at least prison time, right? Although I guess for GI Robot, like, is the fact that he has programming that makes him kill any Nazi on sight, like, can he really face jail time in the same way that, like, a human being that does the
that
same?
wasn't, because remember, he wasn't even disarmed in prison.
No, but I guess the logic is
because
that
they know he's not going to kill anyone unless they're a Nazi.
Yeah, but I guess you wonder if it's like, all right, if he has sentience. See, that's the thing. I wish there was like a legal show instead of the DCU that goes to questions like that, because it's not like he's like an autonomous robot that just decided to kill these Nazis. Like that's in his programming.
I mean, with Magnus, that was the closest hint that we had that, okay, so it is a thing that there's somewhat of the one connection that we had. And again, I read into this, mind you, that when Dr. Magnus asked GI Robot, so what do you, aside from your programming, what do you want to do? I'd like to see my friends again and kill Nazis with them. So that hasn't, the way in which we broke up that line possibly suggests to me fundamentally he wants to see his friends again, and maybe killing Nazis is the bond, is the thing that takes him back to the happiest moment of his life. And if you want to take it a step further, kind of wants to die in battle like his friends probably did. That latter part's a guess, mind you, and ultimately what happens to him. So it's not technically, doesn't seem ultimately wrong, but you know what I mean. It's a question of like how much of it is like the drive. I mean, he was deemed he was deemed human enough to stand trial versus a robot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. I don't know if they kind of read into it that way, where okay, he is. There is a human drive behind what he does, but again, he is literally designed to kill Nazis as in his programming. And yeah, that's not fair. G.I. Roa didn't get a fair shake on that.
Which kind of makes you wonder. It's like what he's been passed around is like, are people not aware of that programming? I guess since the war is over, like nobody really thought much into the fact that like that program will still persist. Like.
I still think that judge might have, because of that town, it might have. There's a chance the judge might have had affiliations with that, with the group.
Oh yeah, because yeah.
It's all hearsay, but I'm saying I think there's in terms of like GI getting, like it really seemed a little stacked against them. Well, they were all neo Nazis. It was a rally,
I mean, they didn't commit any crimes though, right?
They might have been a militia though, because again, they had the one. I don't know. There's a chance they might have been like a militia thing.
Well, even if they're a militia, like GI Robot is committing.
I mean, we had a guy in a literal Nazi uniform there too at the meetings. So.
Yeah, but like they weren't committing any crimes, or they weren't designing to commit any crimes, right? Because they can have
there was a slideshow.
Yeah,
GI Robot probably destroyed the slide though, so that probably hurt his case. But
I mean, again, even if you know that there's a plot to, do we even know these were just Nazis organizing? I mean, again, these were Nazis. I'm not trying to make GI Robot to be a monster in that case, but it's like the thing is like all the other people, they commit the crimes they committed. There's no doubt that they were framed or whatever. Like Weasel didn't do his crime.
No,
but yet he's probably the most scared. He's always the one person that's feared the most by anyone, because he looks the most monstrous, and that's kind of the thing that James Gunn as a writer is always trying to play with. It's like, just because someone looks like a monster isn't always the actual monster. But
yeah. Anyway, yeah. So Say it's rather tragic seeing kind of Weasel just helpless to save the last of his little friends as he's being arrested after being shot a bunch of times. It's pretty sad. And then we kind of end on this the bittersweet like that's probably chasing squirrels. So like that there's a hat trick right there. So again, we have all this emotional depth, and we're just kind of writing it off so casually and so just kind of so casually outside with the other characters. They have no idea what's going on the inside of that guy's head. They probably never will.
And the last moments of this episode where it's just like he's just kind of moving to sleep. It's like like I wonder what he's dreaming about. And then the bride's like he's probably chasing squirrels, probably.
Yep, there you go.
Man.
So, feel good episode of the season for sure.
Yep.
Nothing says holiday season like dead kids.
Oh man, that's a Christmas gift to someone.
Well, yeah. Ebenezer Scrooge, apparently, but yeah.
Ebenezer
well,
Scrooge
if they're gonna, they might as well decrease the surplus population.
Jeez, Ebenezer Scrooge is not Malthusian dragon. He wants kids to be alive just that way they can work for him and he can make profit off of that.
Oh well, what if they're throwing like snowballs at his hat though?
That's where he gets the police to beat them up.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna kill. We're just gonna put them in the workhouse so they can like lose fingers and everything. It's like we're just gonna do all sorts of like Industrial Revolution horrors to them.
That's the Charles Dickens story right there.
Yeah. And plus, Charles Dickens loved killing kids too. Look at Tiny Tim.
Charles Dickens, fuck them kids.
Charles Dickens, possibly not Father of the Year, but
Well, who's really Father of the Year? Definitely not Rick Flag Sr.
Oh, come on, man.
Well, he's alive, his son isn't, so who really screwed up there?
Peacemaker screwed up there, Rohith.
What, Rick Flag Sr. couldn't train him better to beat up a guy that that cries listening to music?
Okay, so
I say that as I completely overlook Peacemaker's dad.
Yeah. Yeah, so way to tear down the flags when we have a perfectly good, like essentially a white supremacist neo-Nazi father we can kill off by GI Robot's hand, maybe. No, I'm kidding, but
Oh man, GI Robot would have been so helpful in Peacemaker season 1.
Oh God, yes. Would have been so conflicted though. If imagine like Peacemaker's like, oh hey, GI Robot, he's really cool. It was completely oblivious to what his father does.
Well, would he recognize Ku Klux Klan people as Nazis?
Well, I think technically they. Well, I think they can. Well, here's the thing: the new versions of the. Well, the modern day KKK guy. I think a lot of them, especially in the South, they might have like the tattoos and stuff. So there's a chance that they might have been. I don't know. There might have been some crossover. I think they might have counted.
If they don't show the Nazi symbol, they're GI doesn't go off.
Well, remember, GI Robot does ask, like, "Are you a Nazi?" So if someone were to say that, I mean, it's possible.
They say no. They say no, and they're derisive about it. And GI is like, okay, they hate Nazis. Like, no.
He does have that scanner though, so I don't know. I think there's an automatic thing, or if they have check off a lot of boxes that are like in line with Nazism, I think that might be the determining factor. Even if he doesn't get the okay from a superior, then that might be the other factor though. Again,
Vigilante just needs to tell GI Robot these dudes are Nazis, because I think honestly Vigilante GI Robot, if they ever were occupying the same space, it would be such a great duo. A lot of violence, but a great duo.
Oh yeah. Anyway, okay, so I think we've kind of gone on long enough about chasing squirrels. We have more episodes coming up. With not a lot more, but we're about 3 from the finish line. And boy, oh boy, let's see. In terms of characters, I mean, we got Nina, we got Phosphorus, and I think next week might be. It might be Eric. If we're gonna do character backstories, it sounds like we might work in Eric Frankenstein. I think I heard that somewhere. Next week's might be Eric Frankenstein. We'll see. I don't think we necessarily need it because he already had like the Bride episode, but who knows? I mean, he's in the adventure now, so you never know.
I mean, the 5th episode is called The Iron Pot.
The Iron Pot.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Maybe. What do you take Iron Pot to be?
A pod that's made out of iron. No, I'm kidding. I'm being.
Was it Iron Pod or Iron Pot? P-O-T.
P-O-T.
Iron Pot. My instinct would be phosphorus, but I don't know.
Oh, that's the thing that causes. Oh, I think you're right. It must Dr. Phosphorus. I didn't think of that.
I don't know. Anyway, point being, we have characters left, so we'll see where it goes. Anyway, so thanks for joining us, Rohith.
Glad to be here.
All right, see you around, folks. See you next time.
Don't weasel your